shark attack. Thursday night on NBC. ABC News. Straightforward.
The fight against explosions of wildfires in the West. A Boeing 747 air tanker dropping retardant over California's so-called Valley Fire. More than 24 wildfires burning across the state tonight. Military units airlifting people from the flames and an entire town tragically burning to the ground. The intense heat and wind gusts making it a nightmare.
This is hell if I don't know what else.
A tense weekend in the streets of Portland, where political anger has turned deadly in recent days. We go behind the scenes with demonstrators.
The tear gas may be used.
Both far-right and far-left activists and everyone in between hearing their argument as we explore whether some Americans can ever find middle ground. Coronavirus crisis, COVID spreading across campuses, roughly 100 college towns reporting a surge in cases, and a new warning about hand sanitizer after a mom suffered life-threatening burns.
I heard my daughter screaming, "Mom's on fire, Mom's on fire."
Race for a vaccine. Dr. Anthony Fauci saying it's unlikely a vaccine could be ready by Election Day, contradicting President Trump's assertion that it could, as 9 drug makers issue an historic joint statement vowing not to rush a vaccine. 2 months until your voice, your vote, and the campaign fallout for President Trump after that report he called fallen soldiers suckers and losers, what he's now saying about his own military leadership. And Battleground road trip. Our Martha Raddatz crisscrosses the most purple districts in the country to find out what's on voters' minds in these strangest of times.
Good evening. I'm Janae Norman in for Lindsay Davis. Thank you for streaming with us. We begin tonight with some breaking news on the race for a coronavirus vaccine. There could be a setback tonight in one of the most promising studies from the University of Oxford. Their human trials temporarily on hold after a reported potential serious reaction in one of the volunteers. It comes as the CEOs of 9 drug companies racing for a vaccine have issued a joint statement pledging to stand with science in that pursuit. President Trump has repeatedly said we could have a vaccine by the election, but Dr. Anthony Fauci is calling that extremely unlikely. ABC's Steve Osunsami leads us off with those late-breaking developments.
A possible setback this evening. The final stages of human trials at the University of Oxford are being put on hold because one of their volunteers reportedly suffered a suspected serious adverse reaction. A spokesman for the company developing the drug tells a medical news service that they're now hoping to minimize any potential impact of the trial timeline. The chief executives of 9 drug makers who are racing to produce a vaccine that prevents COVID-19 are promising the world tonight that safety is their, quote, top priority. In their rare statement together, they write that they won't ask for approval or even emergency use of any vaccine until demonstrating safety and efficacy through a phase 3 clinical study. We believe this pledge will help ensure public confidence in the rigorous scientific and regulatory process. For weeks now, the president keeps suggesting that a vaccine could be ready by Election Day.
So we're going to have a vaccine very soon, maybe even before a very special date. You know what date I'm talking about?
His critics say he's rushing things for political gain.
I will not take his word for it. He wants us to inject bleach. No, I will not take his word.
But even Joe Biden says it's good for everyone if the Trump administration can help produce a safe and effective vaccine that's readily available by November.
If I could get a vaccine tomorrow, I'd do it. If it cost me the election, I'd do it. We need a vaccine. We need it now.
The CEO of Pfizer says they'll know soon if the president's timeline is possible.
Our base case predicts that we will have an answer by the end of October.
The nation's top infectious disease doctor still doubts a vaccine will be ready by Election Day. He does think more than one will end up making it to market, but says the demand will be so high you likely won't get to choose.
I don't think you're going to be able to pick and choose like you would in a candy store.
And Steve Osunsami joins me now from Atlanta. And Steve, this news about one of the vaccine trials now on hold is just coming in, and you're already learning that that's already having an impact on the trial here in the U.S.?
It is. There is at least a couple dozen human trials here in the U.S. I think the number is actually closer to 60 or more that are using this particular vaccine that is being developed at the University of Oxford. We have heard from at least one of those human trials that is telling us tonight that they are putting their trial on hold until they can figure out what this adverse reaction is all about.
Wow,
Janae.
a really important headline late today that you're following, Steve. And separately, that move by these 9 companies coming together to put out a joint statement as they're all competing in the vaccine process is really incredibly rare, isn't it?
It is. I mean, you know, these are all billion-dollar companies that stand to make a lot of money and, frankly, help the world if they're able to develop a vaccine. There is really a race to develop a vaccine. We're hearing a couple things. One, that it is likely that more than one vaccine will likely make it to market. And despite that, it's not like Americans will get to choose because the demand will be so high. But the other thing that's important to note about these companies and their joint statement is that they are answering the questions about political pressure. There's a lot of talk about the president sort of rushing things and that these companies are essentially bowing to political pressure. And they're trying to make clear to the American public that, yes, when these vaccines are ready, you will be able to trust the medicine. Janae.
All right, Steve Osentami with these big late headlines that will impact so many. Steve, thank you so much. And with the Labor Day holiday now behind us and almost all students back to school, the concern is growing around how to handle outbreaks. And for many communities facing a surge in cases, the timing is crucial. Our Stephanie Ramos is following the latest troubling developments.
Tonight, Labor Day weekend sparking fresh fears of COVID outbreaks from Seattle to Sacramento. A missionary posting these images to support the faithful as many appeared to worship without masks and no social distancing. In Las Vegas, streets packed, many without masks. The country going into Labor Day weekend with twice the level of infection than Memorial Day.
In many ways, we're in much worse shape entering the fall than we were entering the summer. And of course, we know in the fall with schools and colleges opening, we're going to probably see a lot more cases ahead.
Colleges vowing to crack down after scenes like this boat party near Indiana University. The University of Rhode Island breaking up gatherings like this.
It was also pretty frustrating, too, because it was like they all had their masks in their hand. It's really not hard to just put it on.
According to the New York Times, infections have recently spiked in about 100 college communities as students have returned to campus.
They don't tell us like how many cases are on your floor of your dorm or in your dorm in general. And I think that would help a lot, but I also think it might scare people.
At the University of Georgia, classes are in person, cases jumping to 800 in 1 week.
I think we shouldn't even have been on campus this semester because of the rise of cases.
The mayor of Athens saying the return of up to 25,000 students is one reason for the rise.
We've seen this dramatic spike, including in the last month, doubling the number of deaths we've had this year. So just as many deaths in the last month as we had in the prior 5 months combined.
New York University today announcing that all members of the NYU community are required to be COVID tested. And not just at the testing tents that you see behind me, but kits are now also available to students at their dorms. Janae.
All right, our thanks to Stephanie Ramos there. Well, from coast to coast in the biggest cities and the smallest towns, millions of Americans have marched under the banner of Black Lives Matter, demanding justice and equality. The vast majority of these demonstrations have been peaceful. At the same time, we have all seen the violence, the looting, destruction, and now deaths in some instances as well. A Trump supporter gunned down in Portland, allegedly by an Antifa supporter. 2 protesters killed allegedly by an armed teenager who traveled to Kenosha, Wisconsin to protect businesses and, quote, help people. The president has been calling for law and order, but many say he is fueling the flames. The question now on everyone's mind, what happens next? Our Matt Gutman, as part of our ABC News division-wide series Turning Point, spent the last several days in what could be considered the protest epicenter of the U.S., Portland, speaking with people on all sides about when and how this may all end.
And we do got the power. Finally, time to take back what's ours. Yes.
The bard of Portland's protest movement banged out his rhymes.
It's time to call your ancestors.
The freestyler's name is Sean Lopez, but everybody here knows him as No Shoe. But within an hour, No Shoe and over a dozen others here would be on their way to jail. half-hour interview 2 nights earlier also broken up.
Police have just started to move in.
Portland's East Precinct riot police moving in with the stealth of ninjas. And Saturday night's interview also busted by a police bull rush.
What happens now?
It's up to the people, you know? Sometimes.
This is the third warning since 10:45 p.m. that tear gas may be used.
That's pretty much a sign that tear gas is about to be used. Oh, here are the cops, right? Actually, they're right here.
In the stampede away from the flailing batons, our crew split up, our cameraman knocked down. That night, protesters with a significant escalation. On their 100th night of protests, they tossed gasoline bombs.
Oh my God!
Those Molotov cocktails cracking at the feet of a demonstrator who then seemed to dance through the fire, rolling on the pavement, bystanders trying to slap out the fire. As so often happened, police declared a riot, blanketing streets with tear gas.
See that cloud of yellow mustardy-like smoke? The entire corner here was lit up.
It has been the summer of protest, of wrath at racial injustice. Estimates say up to 26 million Americans have taken to the streets. The symbols have been the raised fist, the chants that now echo like a mantra. But it has also been the summer of tear gas, burning storefronts, and sometimes deadly violence.
People are just upset, and people have high anxiety on both sides. It's just a powder keg ready to go.
In Kenosha, Wisconsin, 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse allegedly opening fire on a crowd besieging him. He had said he'd come to town to protect businesses and, quote, help people. He's now being charged with killing 2 protesters and wounding a 3rd. And then, in Portland, police say Michael Rainell laid in wait in this parking garage and then targeted a Trump supporter named Jay Danielson. And when a U.S. Marshal SWAT team tried to take Rainell in, they say he tried to flee and brandished his gun.
It just sounded like 4th of July going off. There was just probably anywhere from 20 to 30 gunshots.
Rainell was pronounced dead at the scene. And on Monday, just outside of Salem, Oregon, white supremacist groups chased down anti-fascist counter-demonstrators, pummeling them, cracking one over the head with a baseball bat. At least 2 of them were eventually arrested, and on the laundry list of violence goes. Unlike Kenosha and Louisville and Rochester, Portland hasn't had a martyr for its cause. No George Floyd or Daniel Prude or Breonna Taylor. Its rage seems innate and insatiable. Its battalions of demonstrators seem ready for mini-war, wrapped in black plastic armor, shields, bike helmets, and gas masks. No shoes, only protection, and his only weapon, his voice.
When you come out here, are you freestyling? Are you making up as you go along?
Yeah, easy like 1, 2, 3. I'm with my friend Matt on ABC. All we need is peace, LOVE. Look, we don't like police. Yeah, just freestyling off the top, yeah.
And what's it like? I mean, you described what you do and Trumpet Man as being, you know, the bards of this movement.
How's it going? Yeah, people need that morale boost, you know what I mean? We're speaking positivity, we're coming out here, we're showing that we're not fearful, and it really boosts people's energy and morale while we're getting bombed with tear gas, you know what I mean?
Oh, here are the cops, right? Actually, they're right here.
We lost him in that cloud bank of tear gas, but caught up with him the next day. On Sunday night, he and another musician known as Trumpet Man played until his mattresses burned. Within hours, they'd be in jail. You can often hear the crowd say they're like water, flowing. That also means there's no hierarchy here and therefore little leadership. On Saturday night, after the Molotov cocktails, we watched as protesters tried to regroup in a park. A short march later, 2 squads joined. It felt like success, water meeting water. And again, they poured out into the streets. And yet again, couldn't decide where to go or what to do. So for the next 2 hours, they walked in circles. What they have in perseverance, they seem to lack in a cohesive message. For his part, No Shoe waxes on about self-governing, about the total abolition of police.
Where do you hope this movement goes?
I'm really before, just abolishing police, tearing down the system, building a better, beautiful one, you know?
Do you want to see no police? I mean, do you think the police should be abolished completely?
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't need police. We don't need, we're not babies. We can govern ourselves, you know what I mean?
You would need somebody to do the governing, right?
I think the people are definitely capable of that, and I think we're strong enough to lead ourselves and govern ourselves and police ourselves.
That's not a message everyone can get behind.
You're not someone who believes in defunding the police.
No, absolutely not. Mainly because I'm black and I live in a low-income community, and I believe the police should be made up of the community.
We first met Sean Gaston in Seattle's autonomous zone. CHOP, as it was known, was set up in the aftermath of the George Floyd protests that seized the country in late May and early June. Since then, Gaston's become something of a professional protest speaker, known for his nuanced arguments and his trademark button-ups and bow ties.
You don't believe in defunding the police.
We already don't have enough police officers of color, right? So if you grow up in a low-income community and you see this, you see the drugs, you see the gangbanging and prostitution, and you're not getting no opportunities. You got a lot of things that you could achieve to do at 18 years old, right? Instead of committing your first felony and being incarcerated. Instead, why don't you be that jailer?
You're saying you want to see people in your community go into corrections, go into the Postal Service.
Enforcement, go into Postal Service, go into positions that we see every day. We see that cop every day. We see that postal worker every day. Hey, you can be that person instead of hanging out and doing this and doing that and carrying on raising the ruckus. If you're doing that.
So you're calling for change from within?
Within, absolutely.
Out here, his bow tie and the crowd of folks wearing black isn't the only thing that makes him stand out.
People are chanting Black Lives Matter right now, but over the past couple nights, you don't see that many people of color out here.
No, you don't. And Black Lives Matter, exactly right, but we need more black people coming out. I think a lot of black people are staying at home because they feel like this movement's been hijacked, right?
The movement's been hijacked.
It's been hijacked, right? There's not a direct leader of the Black Lives Matter movement.
We watched Gaston work that crowd on Friday night before he began to be heckled for not wearing a mask.
I asked nicely, dude. All I asked is, can you wear a mask?
But Gaston's expulsion became moot just minutes later.
This morning they're going to
Crowd control agents, including but not limited to.
Police rushing out, tackling a woman just feet away from me.
You see them make arrests.
There's a theatricality to these protests. Some refer to it as violence light, and the BLM and Antifa movements depend on squadrons of streamers, easily identifiable by vests and jackets festooned with the words press. Now, these are not traditionally accredited reporters, but they put out hours of streams a night documenting the unrest. They often blur the line between press and activist. One of them is a man named Jedi.
Am I surprised by the dedication?
I mean,
not really.
No other city in America has had 100 nights of...
Consider what's at stake? No.
Yeah, so how would you describe it? Is this Antifa? Is this anti-police? Is it...
A lot of anti-fascist people. This is anti-fascist. And that's one thing we need to stop saying Antifa, because I feel like people have severe cognitive dissonance when they attribute Antifa to terrorists. We are anti-fascists.
Several hours and a couple of mugshots later, No Shoe and Trumpet Man are out of jail. A few hours ago, No Shoe went back to the police station to pick up his most precious possession, that amp. And when asked whether that arrest will stop him from protesting, he said, no way. He's going to be right back at it. Matt Gutman, ABC News, Portland.
A big thanks to Matt Gutman there. Well, now to the wildfires raging in the West as California battles one of its worst wildfire seasons ever. More than 2 million acres have burned so far. In Southern California, look at this. A smoke-nado was spotted. The San Diego Fire Brigade reporting unpredictable behavior. Thousands of homes are threatened and residents have been forced to run for their lives. Some taking videos of themselves basically driving through flames. The fire closing in on both sides as they try desperately to escape. And tonight, a state of emergency persists for the state of California, and our Zoreen Shah is there for us with the latest.
Tonight, at least 25 wildfires raging in California, many continuing to explode in size, scorching through millions of acres, threatening thousands. Just hours ago, the Army National Guard making the perilous journey through thick smoke to airlift more than 150 campers and hikers trapped by the Creek Fire in Lake Edison. The Creek Fire near Fresno burning through over 143,000 acres in only 4 days. Firefighters unable to contain it. Over the weekend, more than 200 people had to be rescued by helicopter at a campground near Fresno. The Creek Fire blocking the only road out.
There's fire on all sides, all around us. All the roads are burnt.
Some people taken to nearby hospitals with severe burns and broken bones.
This is hell if I don't know what else.
This is one of the largest and most dangerous fires in the history of Fresno County. We're in uncharted territory with the amount of evacuations and with the speed of the fire.
The Meek family tried escaping in their car, eventually jumping in the water as they saw flames grow close.
There was really no warning. The fire just moved so fast, so there was only so much we could do.
The National Guard realizing they were quickly running out of time.
The conditions were pretty extreme. A couple of the crew members started complaining that the smoke was making them nauseous. Every piece of vegetation, as far as you could see around that lake, was on fire. And just keep going until we ran out of people.
The El Dorado fire in San Bernardino started by a smoke-generating pyrotechnic device used at a gender reveal party.
You always have the chance, at least in California, the chance of you doing something that causes a spark and causes a fire is high. And particularly this time of year, anything that is potentially going to cause a spark should be avoided.
That fire burning more than 9,000 acres since Saturday, burning structures near Oak Glen. The San Bernardino Fire Department tweeting this video showing them battling a wall of flames to save the village. Some folks fighting themselves with garden hoses, desperate to save their homes. And the Dolan fire in Monterey County exploding overnight, nearly doubling in size. Moving so quickly, firefighters were forced to deploy fire shelters, only used when their life is in imminent danger. All are accounted for. And it's not just California. Fires now burning in 9 western states. In Washington state, hurricane-force winds helped fuel the destruction. People with only minutes to evacuate the town of Malden, south of Spokane. Cars destroyed, homes burned to the foundation. The area a complete wasteland.
It was surreal. It was like, you can't believe how fast. I still can't fathom how quickly it traveled.
Back to the Creek Fire in California, loved ones this morning waiting at the airbase for hours to see their family members. Mom Lorena CHACON growing emotional, seeing this image of her sons on the helicopter back after being separated from them for 5 days.
So I got a picture of my ex-husband and my 11-year-old son on the plane. They are on their way back to safety and they are out of harm's way. It was great.
And finally, the big reunion. Lorena seeing her boys and their dad from a few hundred yards away.
It's a real relief that we were up there and they got to bring us home to our family, and it's just a real relief, you know?
I feel it's a little surreal having them here because it was such an anxious wait, not knowing what was going to happen and when they were going to be here. So it's surreal just having them here in the flesh.
One of the challenges with the Creek Fire are the number of dead trees in this area because of the drought. Combine that with record high temperatures, incredibly dry conditions, and firefighters have their work cut out for them. Now, the air quality hasn't helped much either. That has really hindered these rescue efforts. And Janae, in terms of long-term outlook, we haven't even hit the worst of it. October, November, December are some of the toughest months. That is when the Santa Ana winds pick up, and it proves to be incredibly dicey out here. Janae?
Hard to imagine it getting worse, but our thanks to Zareen there with those incredible images tonight. Well, as we heard, the wind and dry conditions are making the fight to contain these wildfires that much more difficult. With more on that, including the forecast, let's go to our chief meteorologist, Ginger Z.
Janae, we have just seen a barrage of helicopters, even in the last hour, trying to get along Highway 38. There are so many hot spots, and they've got to get them out because all of those smoldering spots are going to meet up with Mother Nature's kerosene, meaning the Santa Ana winds. It is already in the high desert. It's coming here any moment, and we're going to end up seeing where that high pressure settles in, right, at the Great Basin. It rotates clockwise, and so that's why you see those offshore winds. The winds will shift here, eventually northeast and then east. They will pass over the mountains. They will compress. They're dry. The relative humidity anywhere from 5 to 10%. And you'll end up seeing some of these places with gusts 40 to even 55 miles per hour. That makes for extreme erratic fire behavior. Now, it's not just here that we've got fire danger. Red flag warnings are up from Arizona to Washington state. And I want to make sure everyone understands, even if you are not threatened right next to one of these fires, it is impacting your everyday life. The smoke, I don't know if you've seen some of these images, so thick in the air in parts of Oregon, Northern California, here even throughout the day, we barely could see the sun because of the smoke. So air quality, a big issue too, as we go through the next couple of days for millions of folks here along the West Coast. Janae?
Ginger, our thanks to you, and we're thinking of Ginger, Zorine, all those firefighters and families impacted, hoping everyone stays safe. Well, now to the race for the White House. With Labor Day behind us, we're in the final stretch. Election Day just 8 weeks away. President Trump visiting 2 battleground states today, still facing fallout over those alleged comments about veterans. And now a new controversy over what he said about military leaders and their motivations. Here's ABC's Chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
President Trump today hit the campaign trail in a state he must win.
It's my home state. It's called the state of Florida, and it's a great state.
With exactly 8 weeks until Election Day, the president is dealing with fallout from a report in The Atlantic, citing anonymous sources that he made disparaging comments about Americans killed at war. The article alleges the president refused to visit a World War I cemetery during a trip to France in 2018, saying, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers." The president did not make the planned visit via helicopter, citing bad weather, sending his chief of staff, John Kelly, to go by car instead.
When it comes to veterans, he's downright un-American. I'm sorry if I'm getting close to losing my temper.
The Biden campaign has already seized on the article, making this video featuring veterans.
It's filled with losers. It's filled with heroes.
The White House has pointed to on-the-record statements from more than a dozen people who accompanied the president on his trip to Paris and say they didn't hear him make those comments.
Who would say a thing like that? Only an animal would say a thing like that. There's nobody that has more respect for not only our military, but for people that gave their lives in the military.
The article also says the president had been with John Kelly during a Memorial Day visit to Arlington National Cemetery and alleges that while standing by the gravesite of Kelly's son, who died in Afghanistan, the president said, "I don't get it. What was in it for them?" That comment has not been refuted by Kelly, who has said nothing on the record about the article. The president created more controversy yesterday by questioning the motivations and loyalty of America's military leadership.
It's one of the reasons the military, I'm not saying the military is in love with me, the soldiers are. The top people in the Pentagon probably aren't, because they want to do nothing but fight wars so that all of those wonderful companies that make the bombs and make the planes and make everything else stay happy.
The chief of staff of the Army took issue with that at a virtual event today.
I can assure the American people that the senior leaders would only recommend sending our troops to combat when it's required for national security and in the last resort.
All right, and John Karl joins me now live. And John, these comments about military leaders and their motivations are really drawing some fire, and they don't exactly square with the president's own message on defense spending, do they?
Well, certainly not the idea that he's somehow against the military-industrial complex or concerned about excessive defense spending. The president brags all the time. I mean, I have heard him many, many times go out and talk about the military, the military increases, the increases in military spending that he has done. And in fact, he often talks specifically about how the military spending that he has pushed has helped specific defense companies. So no, doesn't exactly sound all that consistent.
All right. And John, separately, you're also following some new developments with the embattled Postmaster General Louis DeJoy. That's now sparked a congressional investigation. Explain what's going on there.
Yeah, this is all out of a Washington Post story that said that DeJoy had pressured employees of the company that he owned until 4 years ago to make donations to Republican candidates, Republican campaigns, and then would effectively reimburse those donations through bonuses. That would be illegal if that, in fact, turns out to be true. Now, DeJoy's spokesperson has denied that he violated any campaign finance laws. The president was asked about this yesterday, and he said that if the allegations were true, that DeJoy should lose his job.
So many big headlines out of Washington, and John following them all. Thank you so much, John. Well, we've got a lot more coming up. When we come back, the chilling investigation underway in Mexico after a couple from California is discovered at the bottom of a well. The police chief and his entire command staff stepping down after days of protest over the death of Daniel Prude. What the chief said was the motivation behind his early retirement. But up next, the warning from a mother recovering from life-threatening burns on parts of her body after she used hand sanitizer. Stay with us.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
We move up to the vehicle. He detonates the bomb.
The heroes who stopped the killer, who held the city of Austin hostage for 19 days.
It's a tripwire.
All hands on deck. The clues, the Home Depot video, that truck, and the agent who connected the dots.
It was exactly the vehicle that we were looking for.
Inside the investigation,
Vans made contact.
the takedown of the bomber. Now streaming on Hulu.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis. 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David. Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael. You can see just home after home.
David, thanks to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
When your animal is in trouble, you need someone incredible. Who's next? When your favorite pet needs a trip to the vet, you need someone incredible and knowledgeable and respectable. You need a Dr. Pole.
Thank you. The Incredible Dr. Pole. New episodes Saturdays at 9 on Nat Geo Wild.
Right now, at this defining moment in America, with so much on the line. From ABC News, a groundbreaking month-long event. Every night, taking on this moment for America. Turning Point, the Nightline event, starts tonight, late night on ABC.
Welcome back. Hand sanitizers have become a staple in the fight against COVID-19. Many of us using them multiple times a day, but experts are reminding us they are flammable. And one Texas mom is warning others after her dangerous experience. Our Ariel Reshef has the story.
It's one of the most popular products of the COVID-19 pandemic, hand sanitizer helping keep the virus at bay. But now, mom of three, Kate Wise, sounding the alarm after suffering burns to 18% of her body.
The explosion happened that in a matter of 2 seconds lit my entire body on fire.
Kate says she rubbed a generic brand sanitizer on her hands and soon after lit a candle in her Austin, Texas home, flames quickly spreading.
I heard my daughter screaming, "Mom's on fire, Mom's on fire."
Kate spending several days in the ICU, now recovering from second and third degree burns to her face, arms, and legs.
It's a gas. And it's the fumes and the vapors that come off the alcohol that actually can form an explosive mixture.
According to the CDC, fire incidents related to alcohol-based hand sanitizers are very low, but the National Fire Protection Agency considers them a flammable liquid. Our affiliate, WPLG, demonstrating how sanitizer can catch fire. Watch as the reporter's glove is ignited.
Touch it close to the grill. That would be my bare hand, and it's on fire.
Doctors say sanitizers are important in the fight against coronavirus, but urge using them with caution, making sure your hands are completely dry before handling anything that might have an open flame.
A heater or a lighter. Something as simple as a cigarette lighter, that could be quite dangerous.
And experts say the gases from the alcohol and hand sanitizer can linger in the air or on your hands for several minutes, so you should hold off before handling anything that could ignite. Janae?
Ariel there with important reminders. Make sure your hands are dry. Our thanks to Ariel. Well, still ahead on Prime, the elderly passenger kicked off a plane. Why he was accused of being disruptive after giving the flight attendant a message. Why Harry and Meghan paid back millions for the renovations of their home in England, and why that may signal their freedom from being royals. And our Martha Raddatz travels to several states just weeks before the elections. What's on voters' minds, and what does that say about the race for the White House right now? But first, our tweet of the day. He won't be on the real football field, but Colin Kaepernick is suiting up for Madden 21.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
You trust him? I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange. Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Whew. Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working out?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying?
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
In America, you've got to earn respect.
I'm the boss. This is my town.
They're going to war with us.
We'll kill them all.
There's a big fish out there.
We're the future. They're the past. They just don't know it yet.
Fargo, September 27th on FX. Next day, FX on Hulu.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
The coronavirus. Everyone has concerns. And tomorrow, Dr. Jennifer Ashton is here, helping you better understand it all, helping you protect yourself and your family. Your questions answered tomorrow
On Good Morning America.
We are just 8 weeks from Election Day, and the country is embroiled in a racial reckoning that some say President Trump helps inflame through his rhetoric and tweets. But still, recent polls suggest that Trump's support among Black, Hispanic, and college-educated white voters has remained remarkably steady since his 2016 victory. We take a closer look by the numbers. Recent polls suggest about 10% of Black voters, both nationally and in key swing states, support President Trump. That matches Trump's support among Black voters back in 2016, according to 538. And between a quarter and a third of Hispanics nationally are backing Trump, which is also similar to their support in 2016. And despite Trump's inflammatory campaign rhetoric about Mexicans in 2016, Trump won about 28% of the Latino vote, which was about the same that Mitt Romney won and other Republican presidential candidates before him. Hillary Clinton won among white college-educated voters by 17 percentage points in 2016, and now Biden leads in that group by 23 percentage points, according to Pew data. But Trump's support remains steady, above 40%, with college-educated white voters in key battleground states like Florida and North Carolina, also in Georgia and Texas. And we still have a ton to get to here on Prime. Our Martha Raddatz traveling 2,200 miles, taking the temperature of voters with this election drawing near. What's the #1 issue for voters right now? We'll tell you coming up. And the emotional tribute from one of the co-stars of the late Chadwick Boseman, still trying to come to grips with his death from colon cancer. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Seeing right now, this is part of the eye wall.
This procession of migrants goes back 2 miles.
There is going to be catastrophic damage.
This fire has made a run. You can see those flames shooting up into the sky.
We are on the jam-packed red carpet.
To the right, guys.
So this is the 4th weekend of protest.
Watch ABC News on location for Facebook Watch.
The waters of the Outer Banks are unforgiving and full of riches for the fishermen who dare. The best of the Northern Fleet are heading south. The locals know where the giants lie. And if you thought the waters were unforgiving, wait until the battle begins. Wicked Tuna Outer Banks. New episodes Sundays at 9 on National Geographic.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis. 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David. Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael. You can see just home after home.
David, thanks for meeting you.
This was your view.
My favorite view. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Record high heat and bone-dry conditions are making it challenging for crews fighting numerous fires out west. At least 25 large wildfires are burning in California alone. Officials say the Creek Fire near Fresno has scorched more than 140,000 acres in just 4 days, destroying at least 65 structures. Overnight, helicopters flying through the thick smoke, rescuing more than 50 people trapped at Lake Edison.
The conditions were pretty extreme. A couple of the crew members started complaining that the smoke was making them nauseous.
The Dolan Fire in California, 15 firefighters deployed their shelters and 2 were airlifted to a hospital. Authorities saying the El Dorado Fire in San Bernardino County now slightly contained.
Chilling investigation underway in Mexico tonight. Authorities now confirming the bodies of Ian Hershon and Kathy Harvey, an American couple on vacation from Southern California, found at the bottom of a well in western Mexico. They were reported missing last week. The airline responding after a senior was kicked off an Allegiant Air flight in Punta Gorda, Florida. The man reportedly telling the flight attendant to put her mask on while giving the safety briefing. The passenger was accused of being disruptive. The airline says they take off that mask briefly so passengers can hear.
8 months after Harry and his wife Meghan stepped down as working members of the British royal family, they're now calling themselves financially independent. They have paid back the British taxpayer money that paid for the refurbishment of their home here in the UK. That's Frogmore Cottage on the Queen's Windsor estate, where of course they lived after the birth of their son Archie. Specifically, it was thought that Harry would rely on money from his father Prince Charles, but they've actually found support elsewhere in California, like Tyler Perry, who gave them the use of his mansion before they have now bought their own place in Montecito for a reported $15 million. So what's next for the royal couple? Well, they're going to be focused on this multi-million-dollar Netflix deal. Could be part of the reason why the couple are now calling themselves financially independent. That's going to be focused on doing projects that are close to their heart, like a nature docu-series and also an animated project on inspiring women.
Scientists say bulked up mutant mighty mice held onto their muscle during a month-long stay aboard the International Space Station.
8 normal mice that were given muscle growth treatments in space returned to Earth with dramatically larger muscle. Scientists say the results hold promise for preventing muscle and bone loss, which naturally occurs in astronauts. Meanwhile, NASA is also opening the vault and releasing quite a treat for stargazers. A treasure trove of cosmic images have now been made public. These photos were compiled with data, radio waves, and extremely powerful telescopes. The pictures feature stars, galaxies, and planetary nebulas.
An emotional tribute to the late Chadwick Boseman. Black Panther co-star Lupita Nyong'o with her first public comments since his death from colon cancer, calling him a man of great hope, making the most of his time, and saying his death doesn't make much sense. She shared a photo of them together with the hashtag, "Take your time, but don't waste your time."
Now to the major police shakeup in Rochester, New York, after days of protest over the death of Daniel Prude, after an altercation with police that was captured on body-worn cameras. Today, the mayor announced the police chief and his entire command staff are stepping down. ABC's Trevor Ault has more.
Tonight, a week into intense protests rocking Rochester, the mayor with that bombshell announcement.
I do want to inform you that the entire Rochester Police Department command staff has announced their retirement.
Police Chief Laron Singletary, a deputy chief and a commander abruptly retiring, and 2 others leaving their command positions for a lower rank, catching the entire city council off guard.
It was unexpected. I didn't know that it was going to happen.
Is there any type of blueprint about how to move forward?
There is not.
Put your hands behind your back. This as outrage mounts following the release of this disturbing body camera video showing Daniel Prude's deadly encounter with police back in March. Last week, Mayor Lovely Warren said Chief Singletary told her Prude died of an overdose, but later defended his actions, saying today the chief was not asked to resign.
His career and his integrity and his, has been challenged. He didn't in any way try to cover this up.
Late this afternoon, the chief releasing a statement saying, quote, "I will not sit idly by while outside entities attempt to destroy my character," adding, "The mischaracterization and the politicization of the actions that I took after being informed of Mr. Prude's death is not based on facts and is not what I stand for."
And we're joined now by Trevor Ault, who has been in Rochester, New York, really through the weekend. And Trevor, tell us exactly, when is the police chief expected to leave, and how did Daniel Prude's family react to today's announcement?
Well, Janae, the mayor says tonight that the police chief is expected to stay on through the end of the month as the city now is scrambling to lay out its path forward here. When the mayor made the announcement to city council, no one was aware of it. Even she didn't know how long the chief would be in his position before he left. So now they have about 3 weeks to figure out their plan forward. The Prude family did release a statement tonight. They say that this is a positive step, that it was an important and necessary step for healing and meaningful reform in the city, as now we're a week into extensive protests over the death of Daniel Prude, Janae.
And Trevor, I see that you're standing there in front of barricades where we saw clashes throughout the weekend, that public safety building behind you. What's expected there tonight?
Well, I can tell you that the protesters have been calling on Chief Singletary to resign. So this should come as welcome news to those protesters, but we don't expect the protests to stop. You can still see these barricades are, of course, up. I can tell you that while the protests have been happening for about a week now, the past 2 nights have gone very smoothly, very calm. Even though there's been thousands of people in the street, they passed largely without incident, and the main difference was the police response to the protests. They still had barricaded up the public safety building here. Prior to that, they had barricaded about a quarter mile of city streets. They've showed a lot more restraint. I talked to the president of City Council today. She says there's no reason to believe that Rochester would be any less safe, either for the people of Rochester or for the people who are out protesting, who she wants to support as well. Now, this news likely welcome to those protesters, but they want a lot more than this, Janae. They still want those officers involved in Daniel Prude's death to face charges. A grand jury has been impaneled, but charges, if they ever come, could be quite a long way away. Janae.
All right, Trevor, we know you will stay on top, letting us know how things go tonight. Trevor out there in Rochester, thank you so much. Well, now to the 2020 presidential race. While the pandemic has made covering the campaign anything but normal this year, there's nothing like getting out and talking to voters in person to get a sense of what's behind the polls in this tight contest. So last week, ABC's Martha Raddatz headed out on a cross-country trek from Pennsylvania to Ohio, Missouri to Colorado, getting a pulse of the nation about what's resonating in the race for the White House.
It has been a 2,200-mile journey through America's cities and towns, some abandoned from the COVID outbreak, some far too crowded for safety, others bearing the scars of racial injustice and the fallout. But everywhere we went, the presidential election loomed, from the suburbs with manicured lawns sprouting political preferences to the heartland, where even massive wind turbines and endless fields were dominated by politics. Which is why we began our journey in the battleground state of Pennsylvania. Empty storefronts lined the streets of Braddock, the birthplace of steel, once a former industrial hub.
Well, I'm Joe Scholler. I'm a fourth-generation sheet metal worker.
And an ardent Biden supporter.
Donald Trump just lacks empathy. Joe Biden has seen tragedy in his life, but I think he has the empathy this country needs right now.
And it's personal. The once friendly policy talks with neighbors have ended.
It's a lot of anger, screaming, and yelling. It's very hard to get down to the nuts and bolts of things.
John Fetterman is Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor and the former mayor of Braddock. How do you think Joe Biden will do here?
Joe Biden's going to do extremely well. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is, and everybody knows who Joe Biden is and what he stands for. So any kind of approach to try to paint him as like some radical socialist is shockingly naive, and it's going to be absolutely ineffective.
As the country grapples with this contentious election, the reckoning on race is front and center. President Trump has cast himself as the law and order candidate, a message that Trump's base embraces. What do you think of Biden?
I don't trust him.
For these lifelong Hamilton, Ohio residents, Trump's word is gospel.
I think he almost walks on water.
Mary Rose Durbin says Trump is an imperfect man, but a perfect president.
Well, they couldn't buy him, and they can't control him. Every promise that he made in 2016 that he has followed through on or tried to.
And she will not be convinced otherwise, even on Trump's low support from African Americans, just 11%. Why do you think there's not more support for him in the African American community?
Oh, honey, I think there's a lot more support for him in the African American community than the media is giving credit for. And I think in November, it's going to show.
He is speaking to his avid followers. He's not speaking to me, and he's not speaking for me.
Democrat Alicia Triggs is a voter in the suburbs of Cincinnati, alienated by Trump's rhetoric.
The things that he says and tweets do not represent me. And while I live in the suburbs, that it doesn't reflect my views at all.
That out-of-touch accusation echoed in the suburbs of Columbus.
What I would like to push back on is Trump's narrative that suburban women are going to vote for him because we're worried about low-income housing, ruining our suburban lifestyle. We welcome diversity where I live.
The comments that the president has made about the suburbs, when you hear comments like that?
I think it's very dismissive and minimizing of what we contribute. I think it kind of plays to maybe the 1950s housewife. That was the role, and that's all that she was. I have wanted to be the stay-at-home wife and mom since I was young. This is my career aspiration, and I assure you that there is still a brain in my head and fire in my heart.
From the Buckeye State, we headed towards the gateway of the West, St. Louis. That iconic arch greeting us the next morning against an overcast sky. In nearby Ferguson, Missouri, a city aflame after the police shooting of Michael Brown in 2014.
That was a new business.
Kathy Jenkins' restaurant was nearly shut down.
My numbers had dropped so low. I always say I almost felt like I was underwater, breathing through a straw.
After those protests, Jenkins, a Biden supporter, started a successful delivery service, but is counting on things getting better.
It's not just about making money, but it's about caring and changing lives.
But those bread and butter issues are vital in this election. No matter where you go across America, no matter who you talk to, one of the biggest issues is the economy and jobs. The pandemic also hitting Benjamin Brown's bottom line.
We were started off the year about 17% up over the best year that we had. And then all of a sudden you start hearing these reports about this virus that's coming in.
Did you have to lay off employees?
We did.
And while Trump's response to the crisis has been fiercely criticized, the president still has Brown's vote. Back on the open road, another some 200 miles under a picture-perfect Missouri sky.
We're kind of changing our business model.
For a meeting with a local rancher. The heartland is considered Trump country, but Michael Billings is the exception. He's the owner of this 300-acre bison ranch. What has COVID done to your business?
Some of the effects of COVID have essentially shut us down. We can't get our animals to the market. We can't sell product.
Billings, who did not vote for Trump in 2016, is putting his support behind Biden. How do you deal with your neighbors who are Trump supporters? Do you talk about it? Do you?
The climate of the nation is such that I wouldn't be surprised if I put up a sign and then my fence is cut and my buffalo are out.
But not everyone has made up their mind. Farmer Robert Hazelton and his nephew Ryan Johnson both voted independent in 2016 and are still undecided this time. Will the debates make a difference, do you think?
No.
Did the Republican National Convention speech make a difference?
I didn't even listen to it.
Hazelton says he likes Trump's support of farmers, but doesn't like some of the way Trump does things. And Ryan?
I've never voted for a Democrat at the top of the ticket. I haven't ruled it out this time.
The final leg of our journey, nearly 8 hours. From the cornfields in Kansas to the mountains of Colorado. Colorado is a classic battleground state, a purple state. There are extremists on the left, extremists on the right, and everything in between. In case you couldn't tell from the I'm a Trumpster bus behind him, Reggie Carr is all in for the president.
I listened to him for about maybe 5-10 minutes, and I knew he was the one.
The president's law and order rhetoric is resonating with Reggie and his business partner.
Wouldn't you want somebody who's going to send in the National Guard or send in authorities to stop people from looting, burning down your buildings? Wouldn't you want a president like that?
Others are eager for change after Trump's first term.
These last 4 years have been really tough, particularly for the Latino community. We've been antagonized by this administration.
Salvador Hernandez helps the Latino community of Colorado engage in the political process and says Joe Biden could be doing more to reach that key demographic.
I currently don't know what his platform is going to be, other than, I'm better than Donald Trump.
Soon after we arrived in Denver, this bombshell headline alleging Trump called fallen American soldiers suckers and losers, an accusation the president has forcefully denied. Tell me what your reaction was when you read that article about the
Broke my heart.
Charlie Dominguez is a Vietnam War veteran.
We're not losers. We're not suckers. The government sent us over there. We didn't say, send me to the war. The government sent us to go fight for this country.
But others we spoke to, like veteran Nick Gray, are more skeptical.
My immediate reaction was, what is this? This doesn't make a lot of sense. And each allegation was supported by anonymous sources.
So you simply don't believe the article?
Absolutely not.
As for how Gray measures the president?
The actions. And what are the actions of the president? What has he done for the military, but also for the veterans as well?
He tweets a lot, he says a lot. I think that's all about going after a certain voting bloc. It's not what he really feels. And so when you take it back to national security, I'm really worried that he's going to put men and women needlessly in harm's way.
Veteran Drew Sloan, a West Point graduate who was severely wounded in Afghanistan, served in Iraq as well. When you first saw it, did it surprise you? Did it make you angry?
It didn't surprise me. You can see what he said about Senator McCain from the very start. I think this is someone who respects the military vote, but that's not the same thing as respecting military service.
With America reopening, how can you stay safe, keep your family safe, and thrive? We all have so many questions.
And that's why we're right here for you with what you need to know.
So join us afternoons with What You Need to Know at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner of 4 Edward R. Murrow Awards, including the most prestigious honor, Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news choice. Now, with so much on the line, ABC News, America's #1 news, is right there for you live on Hulu with stories of strength, Stories of hope, because now when it matters most,
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news, and that news is ABC News.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
Watch the news you need.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Streaming to all Hulu subscribers right now. ABC News, America's #1 news source. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
And finally here tonight, our image of the day. Right here is tennis champ Naomi Osaka at the U.S. Open in her 5th face mask spotlighting the Black Lives Matter movement. Tonight, as you see there, she's wearing the name of George Floyd, whose death in May at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer outraged the nation. Osaka also sporting other names, including Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain, Ahmaud Arbery, and Trayvon Martin during recent matches. Osaka won the U.S. Open back in 2018, beating Serena Williams. If they both win their next 2 matches, it'll be a rematch between the 2 of them in the finals. That would be amazing to see. Well, that is our show for this hour. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Janae Norman in for Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us tonight. Have a good one.